Welcome to Wine for Normal People, the podcast for people who like wine, but not the snobbery that goes with it. I'm your host, Elizabeth Schneider, author of the Wine for Normal People book and certified wine dork.
And I'm MC Ice, just a wine-loving normal person.
This podcast is sponsored by Wine Access, a huge supporter of small, family-owned brands like Vigne di Silvia. Find brands owned by small family wineries. Go to wineaccess.com/WFNP today. Listen in the middle of the show for more details. When I was on our tour through Tuscany with a group of Wine for Normal People patrons, we spent our final night at a small family winery. This was something organized by my very trusted partners at Turissimo. And Beppe, who is one of the owners, is a sommelier, so we coordinate a lot on the trips. And I was told that this would be one of the most special visits of the trip. It was. Stefania Fuselli greeted us with a smile, and her sister Silvia, who is the head of the winery and a retired famous footballer, her mother and her father joined us as we toured the vineyards, the larger farm, and then we sat down for an unbelievable dinner with excellent wines. It felt like being with family. The wines were really amazing, as I said, and we'll talk about them. The ambience was everything you ever hope for when you visit an Italian family. And I knew that I had to introduce Vigne di Silvia to you and to share the story of this beautiful, wonderful family who's getting started in the Bolgheri region of Tuscany, which is really a very dynamic, unusual region. Stefania, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for making our group feel so special when we visited. We felt like we were your family. I'm so excited to share your story.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your introduction. Let me say thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really honored. And thank you for coming to visit me in Italy. It was a pleasure for us.
I could hang out with you for days. I love your family.
Me too.
I got to work on my Italian, though, so then I can talk to Mama. I got to be able to do it.
I can help you.
All right, good. All right, I need my lessons. Let's start with what was happening in the 1940s and 50s that brought people, including Silvio, your grandfather, from Le Marche to Bolgheri, because it's really important to the history of your family and to the story for people to understand how they got there and what the landscape looked like. And then we'll talk more about the wider story. But it was a really interesting time. I did not know about this. I knew there was a lot of migration around Italy, but this is a really interesting story. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's true. Like you said, my family is originally from Le Marche, which is a region on the Adriatic coast. And we were just post-World War II, so in the early 50s, late 40s. And Italy was experiencing a huge internal migration. So basically, people were moving inside the country from one region to another one, trying to get a better life. And at the same time, the Italian government were launching new reforms. One of them was the agrarian reform, which was imposing the aristocrats' landowner to downsize their property by selling some of their lands to peasants. And that's what happened here in Bolgheri. So my family, originally from Le Marche, they were sharecroppers. So basically, they used to work for aristocrats, and they had to give half of their profits to the owner as a rent. So they didn't have much of independence. They didn't have any possibility of growth. And when they came to know that in Bolgheri, there were this possibility of buying some uncultivated lands and also at affordable prices, they thought that it could have been a great idea for them to finally become independent. And that's what happened. So they moved here to Bolgheri and they bought some lands from the marquis in Cisa della Rocchetta, and they settled down, they start their agriculture activities.
I want to talk about the Mezzogiria system because it was actually so horrible.
Yeah.
It's not something that I think people talk enough about in wine because it really impacted a lot of things in wine, like wine quality and the fact that these peasants, like my family would have been right there with yours, by the way, if we had been Italian. I mean, you can never get out from under it, because you're left with whatever you can live off of, but there's no chance of ever being able to sell anything on the side. This is just literally hand-to-mouth living. And in a lot of places, even in Tuscany, people, and I don't know if it went on in Le Marche, but definitely know that it went on in Piedmont. Until the 1970s, people were still doing it even though it was illegal, right?
Yeah, it's true. No, in the market, well, they happened that those families, when they realized that here there was this possibility, they left. So many families left from the same town in the market, and they moved here to Tuscany to hope for a better life. They came here, each of them, they bought like a holding of 5 hectares, which was large enough to allow like enough income to support the family. And in 1953, first of all, they came the heads of the family. So they came here, they overlooked the situation, and they made the deal. And 1 year later, they brought their children and their wives.
That must have been so hard to go from, I've never been to Le Marche, but it's got to look completely different, right? It's very hilly, and then you're going to this very flat area of Tuscany. Tuscany is notorious for being very snotty, right? Like it's a very snooty, it's just known as all over as being very snotty. They think they speak the best Italian. They think they have the best food, right? Am I wrong?
It's true. It was very hard at the beginning for them. My grandfather used to tell me all the time that when my grandmother came here, he told him, "Where did you take us?" Because here, Elizabeth, there were nothing. There were just lands. There were no streets. There were no utilities. They expected a different living condition when they moved here, but they basically had to start from scratch. So they worked so hard, but at the end, they managed to create what they've done. And also, it was very hard for them to integrate in the territory because, the local people at the beginning, the people, they were living in the municipality of Bolgheri, they were seeing the Marchigiani as immigrants. So they really had a hard time to really integrate in the terroir. But they finally got it.
They had their own community too, which is really important for any immigrant community, whether you come from Italy to the US or whether you go from Le Marche to Tuscany. Tell us what Bolgheri is, because I think when people think about Tuscany, they think Chianti, right? Or they think Montalcino, and they think these very hilly, rolling lands. There's altitude in Chianti and in Montalcino and Montepulciano. These towns are high up, they're hilltop towns, but that is not Bolgheri. Bolgheri is completely different. So can you recreate what you told me when we came to see you?
So you have to imagine Bolgheri as a natural amphitheater. So it's a natural amphitheater overlooking the Tyrrhenian coast. It's so special because the terroir is surrounded by hills, which create like a sort of C shape, leaving the east side as the only side open, the one facing the coast. And so this beautiful shape leads to a perfect and amazing microclimate, which is suitable not only for viticulture, but also for horticulture. That's why Bolgheri, before become a wine terroir, was the land of farmers, like I told you before. So yes, it's a petite area. It spans for about 13 kilometers from the northest point to the southern one, and for about 7 kilometers from east to west.
So small.
It's like a gem. I always say Bolgheri is like a special gem, unique terroir.
Talk about the climate, because it also has a different climate, which the Maremma area is quite different. You've got the coast there, so that's going to affect
the coast.
things.
We have, so this special like shape of Bolgheri leads to this unique microclimate, which is characterized by this unique ventilation coming from the coast. So the vineyards, the lands, is constantly refreshed by the sea breeze coming from the coast. And also those hills protect the vineyards from the cold winter winds. So it creates like a very unique, dry, well-ventilated microclimate, which is very good for the cultivation of vines. Bolgheri also, one of the main features is the light. So it's a very bright area, and the light is intensified by the sun rays that are reflected by the sea, which it acts like a mirror. So, and the sun is also important for the photosynthesis of the plant. And one of the main features in Bolgheri is the soil. So in Bolgheri, we have a great complexity, variety of soil. You can find like sandy soil closer to the coast, sandy clay loam soil at the foothills, and gravelly soil on the hills. So it's really varied in terms of soil. And that means that each variety that is planted in one single soil unit can express in a different way. And also the same varieties can express differently based on the soil where it's planted.
That's really one of the most interesting things that I learned while I was there, that you've got these different soil types. But even the slope, there's some places you don't have altitude, let's face it. There's not like big altitude.
Yeah, like the altitude is range from like 10 meters above level till like 380 meters about above level. So
you don't necessarily need altitude, especially for the grapes that you grow.
I think it's a combination of features like the proximity to the sea, the sun exposure, the dry and windy climate, and the terroir. So all the combination of these characteristics shape unique wines in Bolgheri. Also, for example, I forgot to tell you, the breeze helps us to reduce the risk of some diseases caused, for example, by the excess of humidity, which it's very common in other appellations. So Bolgheri is very lucky to have this kind of microclimate.
It is, because then you can do organics more easily. You can take care of the plants more easily, because in some other areas it gets much hotter and they don't have the sea breeze. So you're getting very different flavors in the grapes. Within the context of what you've just told us, where is Vigne di Silvia? Where are you located and what kinds of soils do you have access to?
We are located right in the heart of the DOC appellation in the plain. So we are actually 5 kilometers from the coast, and we are located in an area where the wine business has developed recently. And our soil are medium texture with some clay in the deepest layers, and are well drained, very fresh, deep enough to allow the roots to reach all the nutrients that they need. Mostly we are on the plain, on the coast.
But you're getting nice breezes.
Yes,
because
all the
of
time.
That.
Yeah, even in August when it's 40 degrees, you really feel the breeze and it's amazing. The cooling effect of the winds really helps to have this very healthy climate.
Definitely versus, again, some areas where it's just absolutely still.
Yeah.
So how did you and your family, or really Silvia, go about starting a new winery in Bolgheri? Now, your family's been there a long time, but you just started in wine. So why did you choose the grapes? Is it based on your preference? Is it based on the soil types? Is it a combination? And why did you decide to do it now? And is it hard to start a winery?
Yes, it's true. We actually one of the newest wineries that was born in Bolgheri. And that's happened in 2014. My parents, as I told you before, has been cultivating this land for many, many years, starting from my grandfather till my father and my mother. But in 2014, my parents had this piece of land in between two vineyards. And horticulture and viticulture are not so compatible in terms of agronomical practice. So they decided to plant a vineyard in the piece of land. And they thought that one day Silvia and I could take care of it. So that's
because
happened.
Didn't you say that your dad never wanted to do wine? Wasn't that the one thing that he was like, nope?
My father always preferred to the horticulture. So he always preferred to cultivate his land. He was actually one of the biggest producer of basil in Tuscany. And he always thought that the wine world was far from him, was distant. But at the end, we grew up in a terroir where the wine business was developing, and we have followed the trend in this territory. So that's why they decided to give us this great gift by planting the 1 hectare of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, which were the two varieties that we always liked the most.
Did they know what to plant? Did your dad consult people, or did he just say, okay, this is from his own knowledge?
No. So again, we have followed the trend in the wine business in the territory. Bolgheri is known to be the small Bordeaux because the main varieties are international. So actually, most of the producers cultivate all the Bordeaux varieties, Cabernet Franc, Sauvignon, Merlot. But we decided just to focus on those two varieties, Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, because they are the variety that we like the most because of our taste. And also
you have to make wines you like.
Exactly.
What's the point?
And also because the soil is also suitable for the cultivation of those two varieties. Very good.
When did your parents give the winery over to you? The vines, I guess it's just the winery did not exist. The vines existed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, since the very beginning, we are a very close family. My sister, at that time when my parents planted the vineyard, she was still playing soccer. But my sister, she always had two dreams. She wanted to be a soccer player, and she also wanted to be a farmer. And eventually, she always thought that one day, when at the end of her career, she was going to come back to farm our land in Bolgheri.
Did she know what kind of farmer she wanted to be? Because you got the
No,
chickens,
no.
which you and I are really not into
Yes.
at all, as we know. So, like, was she going to be like what kind of agriculture was she thinking? Was she thinking chickens, or is that all your mom?
No,
Your
no,
mom's
this
all
is
about
my
the
mom
chickens.
passion. My mom, she has this great, she breeds different,
There's many of them, but they're all
too
terrifying
many.
to me. Yes.
I'm terrified too, but the problem is I can't tell no one because, it doesn't,
You can
people
tell
can
us.
believe. Yeah, I
You can
tell
tell me. I am afraid also. You saw me. I was running away with you.
Yeah. No. So no, she didn't know what to do with our land, but when there came this possibility of making wine, it was very, interesting.
Do you think that because Silvia was traveling, she was seeing a lot of different things? Do you think that when she left Bulgari, she was kind of like, well, look, a lot of people do drink wine and this could be a good business. And she also probably made a lot of contacts and knew people because she's a pretty famous footballer.
Yes, she's also a very ambitious person. She's always want to do the best. She always looking to do the best as she can. So yeah, there was this possibility, and she thought it could be like a great business plan after the career.
What year did she retire?
She retired in 2016, right?
Okay.
Like when the vineyard was ready to produce.
Perfect timing.
Yes, perfect time. So she came back home and she really took care of the first vintage of the first harvest since the very beginning. Silvia, she's really great. She's the soul of the winery. She's very intelligent and she always tried to learn from the best people. So she surrounded herself from the best professional people that guide us to do what we're doing.
She had to figure out what to do. So she hired Emiliano Falsini as the enologist. Yes. So how did she choose him? Did she interview a bunch of people or was he just the guy? And what kind of training did he give her or how involved is he? I never understand how the consulting enologists work. I think they all work differently because I think some people want to be very involved and some people say, you come here, you do everything, and then I'll take the credit for it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's definitely not what you're doing, but
no.
Can you explain how it happened and how she picked him?
So we already knew Emiliano because Emiliano was professionally born in Bolgheri. So he started his career here in Bolgheri, following other wineries. And Emiliano is one of the best enologists in Italy right now. And because Silvia, she's very ambitious and she always wants to do best, she asked for the best enology. So that's why she chose Emiliano to be our guide consultant in the winemaking process. And what is beautiful about Emiliano is not only that he's very knowledgeable, so he knows very well the terroir because he has been working here for many years. It's great because he doesn't impose his own ideas. He just helps us, he guides us on our path, and he helps us to achieve what we want to. He just teaches us, he helps us, and he guides us during the right direction, the direction that we want to go. So that's a very mutual collaboration. It's very stimulating working with him.
Does the family and whoever you have working with you do the actual harvesting and making the wine? And you just sort of are self-taught?
Not really. Of course, we do everything because it's a family-run business. So it's my sister Silvia, myself, my parents. So we all do everything. But we make wine in a cellar where people work, of course. But Emiliano is the one that gives us all the directions. But again, guiding us, not imposing us his style. He wants us to make our style. He really listens to what is our taste, what is our ideas, and we really is a sharing of opinions. So it's great. That's why we're thinking to have a long-lasting collaboration with him because we love working with him.
You may learn how to do it yourself, though, and be on your own at some point. Some of it is confidence also. The consulting winemakers can tell you after you learn the craft and the trade and the technology, sometimes you still want them just to make sure that they see a lot of different people. So even though you're more involved than you were before, sometimes it's helpful just to have them to give you another check to say, yes, your wines taste how they should taste.
I think you feel secure. You feel like protect. Being an enologist is not easy. It requires a lot of knowledge. So Not everyone can be an enologist. So what we are thinking is just to improve ourselves. Is we're not thinking of doing everything by ourselves. It doesn't belong to our personalities.
And you're much more farmers, I think, than
Yes.
you don't want to be in a lab. I
No.
can't see any of you wanting to do that. You farm organically and you hand harvest everything. And
Yes.
that's not common in Bolgheri at all. Everybody's using machines because it's flat and it's easy to do.
It's easier, of course, it's easier, yeah.
Do you think it makes a big difference?
Of course, when you're a small winery, you can do more things manually because the manual approach, of course, requires a greater time of work. But many wineries, Elizabeth, are still harvesting by hand here in
good.
Bolgheri. Like the small producer, most of them harvest by hand. But the biggest winery, they had to recur to machinery because otherwise it would be impossible to harvest like 60 hectares by hand in 1 week, 2 weeks.
What about 330 at Antinori?
Yes.
I could not believe how large that. Yeah, we're going to talk about the big guys in a minute.
It's impossible.
If everything's all ripe at once, there's no way to do that. Although they have enough money, they could hire people. They could fly them in from anywhere.
I mean, they have a
big
big team when it's harvest time. But as you said, when it's harvest time, everything is ripening, you have to really move quick.
Yeah.
And that's why, people think the harvest time is so relaxing. No, it's so stressful.
No. Oh my God.
Every time we harvest, it's like a rushing, like working like crazy nonstop all day because
I know.
We have to harvest.
A lot of people, and I know somebody is listening to this saying, I want to do harvest.
Yeah.
I want to contact Stefania and I'm going to tell her I want to do.
Yes, come.
Before you do it, they'll take the help, but you better be ready to really, really work. You got to get out in the field and you've got to harvest, and it is hard work. And then once the stuff comes into the winery, that's usually where I've helped out before, sorting and cleaning, and it's a lot of work.
It's like a workout. You do a lot of squats and, your body hurts at the end of the night. Very bad, I promise you.
Yes. Let's talk about your family. Let's talk first about Silvia and how she wanted to be a farmer. She was such a successful footballer.
Yeah.
What was her concept when she decided, I'm going to open a winery? Did she know what she was getting herself into? I know she is a hard worker, as we've already discussed, but did she know how to do this, or did she talk to people? It's not easy to go from not being in wine at all to being in wine, because there are many layers to it, as you're finding out, because sales is 90% of the business, and you don't realize that until you're in it. So how did she figure out, okay, she had your dad and your mom who knew the farming side?
Of course.
But
she tried, Elizabeth. She worked so hard. She asked everyone that they were ready in producing wine. She studied. She asked for help. She formed herself. And she did a great job because, as you said, it's very, very hard, especially the bureaucracy that is behind the winemaking and the sale part. It's very hard. It's full of competitors. So you really have to go into a very hard business. She really did by herself at the beginning because I wasn't in Italy at that time. So I was supporting her remotely. But I think she did a great job because in the first 2 years, also we started the winery and then COVID happened. So she really worked harder to sell our wines.
I wonder if that was a good thing, though, because it gave her more time
to figure out how to do it.
COVID was terrible, but in some ways it hit a pause button that then made us all slow down for a minute rather than just go, go, go. She probably had more of an opportunity to say, okay, well, I don't understand that one thing. Let me call someone. And people had more time to give her also.
Yes, of course. Also, we are lucky because we have many related families that already have been producing wine for many years, like cousins. So they helped us a lot in the beginning to learn the new wine business. So we're really grateful for them. Bolgheri is still a beautiful community since the very beginning when my grandparents were here till today. Because, the area where we live is the people they have all the same origin. We share the same history. We all can have the same background.
So your dad, Carlo, is a huge basil producer. I'm jealous because that's my favorite thing in the entire world.
You have to come back in 1 month. It's going to be ready.
Oh my gosh. It must smell amazing.
Yeah.
It should be pretty clear that I really loved the Fuselli family and that Stefania and Silvia are so near and dear to my heart. I told them they remind me of me and my sister, who are very, very close. I hope that you are finding this podcast helpful and interesting and just a really great family story. These wines are not available in the US right now, but there are so many small wine brands that are available. One way to get them is through Wine Access. If you go to wineaccess.com/WFMP, you'll get 10% off your first order and you can start shopping and looking for these small wine brands. They're not available widely. These are brands that are from people like Stefania who are young and they might be starting new ventures and they make really great wine that you're just not going to know about unless you go through a curated site like Wine Access. Another way to get really great curated wines is to join my wine club that I have with Wine Access. Wineaccess.com/normal is how you'll do that. Our next shipment is wines that are going to be virtually impossible for you to get because they're all wines from fan favorite, if you listen a lot to the show, Serge Doré. I would love for you to check it out if you haven't done so previously. Wine Access, wineaccess.com/normal to join that wine club, and wineaccess.com/WFMP to see wines that I'm drinking right now, and then to get access to the site so that you can get that 10% off. The box that you get is super high quality. There are notes, there are pairing suggestions, serving temperatures, which I love. So much information about the wine and the winery. Go check it out today. wineaccess.com/normal, wineaccess.com/WFMP, and start getting these small brands in your wine collection today. Also, don't forget winefornormalpeople.com/classes. We've got classes posted on our new website, which was done by Five Forest, my friend Polly at Five Forest. What an awesome website. I'm so excited about it. You can check out the new classes. Rosé is coming up. That's a once-a-year class. I'm going to be doing some other really interesting, cool classes. Check it out today, winefornormalpeople.com/classes. And if you want to support the podcast, help keep us going, and join the best community in wine with so many fun hangouts, great conversations, awesome weekly tips, go to patreon.com/winefornormalpeople, patreon.com/winefornormalpeople. Now let's get back to this awesome show. Your dad never wanted to do wine, as we already said, and he is an amazing farmer, obviously, because to be the biggest basil producer in Italy, that is huge. The demand for that herb in Italy, it's the foundation of everything from Tuscany south. In the north,
Yes.
it's different, but from Tuscany to the south, east and west, everybody needs it. So I cannot imagine he's got this passion. And then I wonder how then he looks at Silvia. He says, okay, fine, we'll do the grapes because everybody's doing the grapes. We'll put them in.
Exactly.
We're going to give this to you. Fine. But now how does he feel about the grapes? And I wonder if he ever talks about how the culture of Bolgheri has changed or evolved, because he was born in Le Marche and then he
Yes.
comes to Bolgheri and grew up there.
Yeah, he was 1 year old.
That's all he ever knew.
Yeah, of course.
I would just wonder, because I think all of us look back, no matter how old you are, once you're grown up, you look back and say, gosh, that place isn't what it used to be. And that places change. Or is it the same? Is it similar?
Yeah, my father, Elizabeth, is the Bolgheri man. He's in love with this terroir. He is a very conservative person. So he would love to preserve Bolgheri the way it is. He really is devoted to this land. And when he works, he really put all his passion into it. And if you want to know where is my father right now, he's in the vineyards working with this tractor. He's constantly working. He's an unstoppable man. I don't know anyone working like him. He really loves
and
his
and he's
land.
so happy. He doesn't have a problem with it. He likes it.
He complains every day because he wants to retire. But then I said, Babbo, because we call Babbo in Tuscany, right?
Yes, yes.
I said, Dad, you can relax. You don't have to work like crazy. But then he can help himself. He has to work and he loves what he's doing. And of course, he's a great farmer because he has been cultivating his land for all his life. But it also takes care of the vineyards in an amazing way. Everybody look at the vineyards of my father and say, wow, Carlo, you are amazing because your vineyards are perfectly
Yeah, they are.
well.
They really
Yes.
are.
You take care of the vineyard like their daughters.
Well, you
He
guys
really
are
loves.
old now. You're older, so he needed
Yeah.
something to take care of. But that's so funny that he made the shift very seamlessly.
My father always say, okay, I'm going to take care of the vineyards, but I don't want to know anything about selling wines, cellar, bottling the wines. You do the rest. I
Right.
take care of the vineyard. I stay outside because that's what he likes. He likes to wake up in the morning, look at the hillside, and is happy.
It's the best part of wine. And if you don't get it right in the vineyard, then there's nothing you can do in the winery, even though people try.
Yeah, and also it's very important to have a person like our father that takes care of the vineyard, because otherwise we have to hire someone, and it's different.
Yes.
My father has a very great knowledge of the terroir, and you know what he's doing. And also we have another important person that helps us in the vineyard, which is Stefano Bartolomei, which is a great agronomist that also has a very great big experience here in Bolgheri, and guides us as well in all the agronomic practices in the vineyard. So we are surrounded by great people, Elizabeth.
It just sounds like it's a whole family. Everybody is in the family.
Yeah,
and
even the professionals that helps us become a family because it's the way we are.
Yes, it is definitely the way that you are. But there's this culture in Bulgari that we don't see on the outside.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's a lot more to it than what people, and including the wine press, say about it. They don't really focus on the small family wineries. They focus on the big guys and the story about the Marchese and all of that kind of stuff, which we'll talk about. Okay, let's give some credit to your mom, Lavinia, who is your support. She is the rock on which you all rely. So how is she taken into the winery? Is she okay with it? She's probably just so supportive of everything either of you do.
So my mother, she's the pillar of the family, and she supports all of us. And she's also the mediator when we have in all our discussions. She helps us in everything, especially in the hospitality. She's really a great help. My mom, she knows how to do everything. So wherever we put her, she can do.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Yes. She's like a real solid person.
Yeah. She's also always supporting us in every decision. My father is always a little more conservative. He's always skeptical about changes or doing something in the farm, in the company. But my mom, she's more like us.
Right.
She's
ready.
Always willing to do something, to change, to create.
It's important to have both. I think it is important to have your father be somebody who says, this is how the tradition goes. We can't change everything. I think it's really important to have people like your dad who keep these traditions alive, because otherwise we get too far away from it, and then it winds up being something totally different that we don't want, I think.
I think one of the peculiarity of our farm is also that we maintain this dual activity. So we do wine while we keep our traditional agriculture. So that's also like special about us. You know, we don't forget where we are from, and also is our dream to keep our agriculture traditions as well.
All right. Speaking of somebody who's really dynamic and wants lots of change. All right. This is the moment everybody's waiting for.
Oh my God.
Let's tell us all about Stefania and how you wound up doing this. You probably have the most wine background of everybody in your family. You're it. No wonder Silvia was on the phone with you every day. So let's hear the whole story. Give it to us.
So basically, I grew up here in Bolgheri. After my high school, I decided to go to study agriculture science. So I studied at university in Pisa, agriculture science. And while I was studying, I also decided to take a certification as a sommelier. But that was just for fun because I was working in an enoteca in Bolgheri. So I was really getting to wine. So I wanted to know more about wines. I didn't want to take the certification just to show off. I just want to know about wine.
Because as we've talked about, you and I are both very type A, have to be doing something. So it's good to have something to go for. After you get the base certification, you can figure it out yourself. That's kind of how I always felt about it. It's like you just need to know where to look for stuff. And then after that, you actually do better if you learn by yourself. That's what I think.
So I got my certification, I finished my university, and I left Italy. I moved to the US for a few years because I followed the love of my life.
Your husband now?
Yes. So at the time, my husband was my boyfriend, and he moved to the US because of boxing. He was a professional fighter, and he moved to New York because one manager saw him and he asked him to fight in his team. So as soon as I finished my study, I say goodbye to everybody. I love you so much, but I'm leaving. Because, I had to live that dream.
And you lived in the city, right? You live in New York?
Yeah. I was living in Staten Island. First of all, in Brooklyn and then Staten Island. I had the best time of my life with the love of my life in the city of my dreams. So I really, I enjoyed so much living there. The energy that the city was giving to me was something that I can't explain to people. The thing that I miss the most is literally the energy that I was feeling every day, the vibrancy when I was walking on the street. And sometimes, I walk through the vineyards and I try to imagine that the vines are like the buildings.
So or the people everywhere.
Okay, joke apart, I feel almost the same energy in the vineyards as well. So when I came back, I realized that you can love two places at the same time, two completely different places. So I was in New York and my sister started this wine journey. But I always support her remotely, choosing the labels, discussing the name, how to call the wines, etc. But at a certain point, I kind of felt the need to come back to help her. She actually told me, Steffi, if you don't come back, I'm going to come and get you because I made you, because I can't do anything.
You had some serious knowledge, though, also that she did not have.
Yeah.
She did sport her whole life. And
you
studied this stuff. You understood some about the sales because you worked in an enoteca, and the sommelier training is not just about the different regions of the world. It's also about selling and about customers and how to deal with that. So I think you are an essential part of
course,
that.
Yes.
Plus, you speak fluent English, and you're the only one in the family that really does.
Yeah.
So there's that too, which is really important because if you sell to Germany, they speak English. If you sell to France, they're going to speak English, right? Yeah. So that's the common language, and your English is flawless. So I think, where did you learn English? Did you learn it in school? And then you perfected it in New York?
Yeah, in New York. Yeah, in school in New York. Yeah, of course.
I don't know. I don't like your accent, though. You got to talk like this. You got to say coffee. You got to talk like we talk. You got to get in there. Come on.
I love American accents.
There's
wish
many.
I could speak like you.
There's many American accents, many American accents. I'm sure you do not love all of them, but the New York accent is definitely very...
I love it.
Very distinctive for sure. Let's talk about your role in the winery. Essentially, even though Silvia is the namesake and she has started the winery, really you are running the winery with her. I just want to give you the credit that you deserve because you are really, really essential part of this, which is that she started it, but she had you as her help the entire time in making all of the major decisions. And it really is a sister-run operation with the support of your parents.
I mean, Elizabeth, Silvia and I, as you knew us, so you saw that we have two completely different personalities, right?
Completely different. Yes.
But we are complementary. So we really match each other. And our strength is that we work together, respecting each other's character, respecting each other's space. So Silvia, she's great in all the bureaucracy stuff that are a lot, and I'm not very good in. So
it's frustrating.
It's stressful. So Silvia, you do, and I keep the smile, and I do, and I take care of the hospitality and other part.
Yeah.
And also Silvia, she also follow more the cellar, the winemaking part. She's graduated in chemistry, so she's really knowledge as well in all the chemistry.
And you're more on the farming side because that's what you studied. You studied more of...
Yes. When I studied agriculture, I did mostly because I grew up in Bolgheri and there are many, many wineries and farms. So at that time I thought, I might find a work in other companies or I might work in my company, my farm. I never thought that one day I would own my own winery.
That's the best thing. is when you don't think you're going to do it, because then you have less ego about it. You just fall into it and then you go, oh, wow, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
Exactly, yes. But Silvia, what I have to say that since the very beginning, even though I was living in New York, she's asked me from the very beginning, Steffi, I want to do this with you. I don't want to do by myself. Are you in with me? Say, yes, but I'm not ready to come back.
Right.
I want to stay here a little longer. So I wait, and I say, Steffi, you have to come back. The winery is going very well, it's expanding, the business doing good. So I need you that when I come back home. And also, since even the name, Lavinia di Silvia, it's true, we chose her name because, first of all, because I love her name so much. I love the name Silvia. But our logo is actually made of two letters, which are overlapping and they create a heart. The logo is like an S, which are our initials, SS, Stefania and Silvia.
I want to talk about the wines. Every bottle has so much significance. Can you tell us about the 3 wines that you make?
Yeah.
And what the significance of each of them is?
Of course. So we produce 3 wines. Giochessa, which is our Bolgheri Vermentino DOC.
So delicious.
Thank you. We produce a Bolgheri Rosso DOC, which is Artemio. And our niche wine is Itinerante, which is 100% Cabernet Franc. It's basically a very niche production. So they're all very high quality level wines.
Yes.
Giochessa is our white, and is a special wine because it's dedicated to my sister Silvia career. Giochessa in Tuscan dialect means like dribbling. So we use this term when we watch a soccer game and a player does a tunnel, a dribbling. We do, the player just did a very great Giochessa. So when he strikes, it's a term that it refers to soccer. So that's why we name the white wine Giochessa. And the label is actually an abstract representation of Silvia while she's kicking a soccer ball.
So cool.
So it's dedicated to her. And also on every back label, there is a sentence, there is a thought written by Silvia, because Silvia, she's also a very good writer. And behind Giochessa, in the back label, there is a sentence that says, when I grow up, I'm going to be a farmer. That's a sentence that Silvia wrote when she was just 6 years old. I still remember that day. It was like Christmas time and we were looking at the notebook from our elementary school and we found the cutest essay ever. Silvia, she was 6 years old and she drew like my father with some vegetables. Aww. And she wrote, when I grow up, I'm going to be a farmer. So that's why we wrote this sentence in the back label.
There's something else special about Giochessa, which is the bit of Le Marche inside of it. So yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, there is an emotional part in Giochessa. So the vintage 2022, mostly is Vermentino variety and is enriched with Verdicchio, just 5% of Verdicchio that we planted 3 years ago to honor our family's origin, because Verdicchio is a native variety from Le Marche, and also is known to be a grape that shape wine with a nice structure, complexity. And so we enrich Giochessa with Verdicchio to give like a longevity to our white wine, because Bolgheri is well known for the reds. Also, Bolgheri, usually winemakers invest more in red wines, but as a white wine lovers, we wanted to make a white wine that could stand next to the reds, age-worth white wine. So that's why we invest a lot in our Bolgheri Vermentino.
It is delicious. I think the other thing that I was going to say is that the big thing that I learned in Tuscany is that I think that Vermentino is really the white grape of Tuscany, and it's not marketed enough as this is a white wine that can stand with the reds. It's Vernaccia because of the big legacy, but Vernaccia can't do what Vermentino can do, at least in my opinion. I feel very hopeful that with things like the Giochessa, if that gets out into the market, I think that could be Tuscany's really, nobody's done a good enough job of really presenting that story, I think.
Exactly. Also, I think people underestimate the Vermentino variety here in Bolgheri.
Yes.
But I think the white wine here in this terroir has a very great potential. So we invest also in the aging process. So because when we make Giochessa, half of the wine ferments and refines in still tank, but half of the wine refines in French oak barrels. So that we do to enhance the complexity and give the structure to the wine. also, after the fermentation, we do what we call like the batonnage, periodical batonnage, to increase the complexity of the aromas. We really invest into our white wine.
Okay, tell us about the other two. Artemio.
Yes, so Artemio is our Bolgheri Rosso, DOC Bolgheri Rosso, and is the wine that is a blend of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, mostly it's Cabernet Sauvignon. And the wine refines for about 10 months in a large wooden vat, oak vat, and in French oak barrels. The wine really expresses the terroir, so it's a typical Bolgheri DOC, but at the same time has like a great minerality and freshness, which is typical of our terroir and is typical of our wines. It's what we look for when we make a wine, enhance the varietal characteristics, the freshness, the acidity, which is not so common in the Bolgheri Rosso, because usually winemakers make Bolgheri with blending with other variety like Merlot or the Syrah. So we decided to just blend those two varieties. It's the only one we cultivate. So
they go really well together. It's a really fresh style,
I think
too.
So.
It's a lot lighter in a good way. I mean, it's not like super heavy.
It's approachable, it's drinkable. So I think if we wanted to make a modern, a vibrant wine, we didn't want to make this heavy oaky wine.
Right.
So that's our style. We make wine that we like to drink. So
of course. And that goes well with food. It makes such good food. It's got to go well with the basil.
You cannot just drink. Exactly.
But what about that label? Because each label has a significance. So yeah.
Artemio, being a Bolgheri DOC, is dedicated to our father. My father's name is Carlo Artemio, so we dedicate it to him because he deserves to have a wine name after him. Because my father is a typical Bolgheri man, so we decided to just dedicate the Bolgheri DOC to him. And
That's
the label
awesome.
is a representation of our farm, so it's an abstract picture of vineyards, basil, cultivated lands, and all the dual activity of our farm are representing the label.
Tell us about Itinerante.
Yes. Itinerante is our 100% Cabernet Franc. We really do the best selection of the grape during harvest time. And Cabernet Franc has found his land of choice here in Bolgheri. And made a Cabernet Franc 100% is very challenging, but because we are very ambitious, so it was our first idea when we start making wine, and we say, Silvia told me, Steffi, I want to do a 100% Cabernet Franc. I said, yes, let's do it.
It is hard. It can have a lot of green flavors if you don't do it right and grow it in the right places.
Yes.
But it's warm enough there.
It's warm enough. And also, you have to really harvest at the perfect time of ripening. So that's also the secret. Now, when you take care of your vineyards very well and you guide your plants from the pruning to the harvest time in a very good way, you really can bring to the cellar the best grapes. So that's what we're trying to do. And Itinerante has also special aging protocol. One part of the wine refines in a beautiful amphora made of coccio pesto, and the rest refines in French oak barrels. The use of amphora is because we want to preserve all the freshness, all the organoleptic characteristic of the Cabernet Franc, because the amphora of coccio pesto doesn't release any flavor into the wine, so it's inert. So basically allow the better microoxygenation, but the wine preserve all its unique flavors. Combining the amphora and the barrels, we can really shape a very elegant and complex red wine, modern, approachable, but at the same time, we can also wait to drink this wine.
People love Cabernet Franc, but it's so hard to find because Chinon in the Loire has gotten more ripe now, but it used to be so green. It's hard to do it, but you do it and you do it really, really well. That's a hard first wine to have, but it's a great point of differentiation because people constantly ask me, where can I get 100% Cabernet Franc? And I'm like, well, Bolgheri and Chinon are the only places that you're going to find that. And it's not always good. It's not always going to be good.
Yeah,
so
it's not that easy.
You need to get distribution in the U.S. so that we can get your wines here.
I hope.
Well, we're going to do our last plea for that on the end. I want to ask you one last question about Bolgheri, because we've kind of skirted around this issue of the aristocracy. And I was looking at the Consorcio's site, and I'm looking at who runs Bolgheri. It is one member of the Antinori or the Incesa della Rocchetta family or a relation of them over and over and over again. These aristocrats still run Bulgheri. So
Yeah.
it just seems like it's not necessarily their fault, but it does seem like they're still doing the system where they're owning all these lands and they run the consortio and they run the business and they set the tone. And then everybody else has got to either ride on their success or you have to go a different direction. And it's very difficult. Part of the reason we don't see more Bulgheri DOC wines here is because when we think of Bulgheri, it's Sassicaia, it's Ornellaia, it's Massetto. And so where's the rest of it? Where is the rest of it? We get some wines from other parts of the coast. You know, we see some Morellino di Scansano. But I have to say, and this is not a nice thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. The wines of Morellino di Scansano do not hold a candle to the wines of Chianti and Montalcino, and it's the same grape. So that's really tough for them. They're not as good and they're competing. You're doing something completely different. And yet the market forces are just saying more Antinori, more Sassicaia. So how does this work? Is it a political thing? Or is it just you guys just do your own thing and they do their own thing and you're part of the consortio because you have to be?
No. That's a very interesting question. It's true that the Consorzio Bolgheri has been led for many years by members of the noble family. But it's also true that many members of the board of directors are made of wine producers who do not have a noble origin, noble people. But it's also true that the wine business in Bulgaria started thanks to those noble family. The Marquis in Città della Rocchetta had this brilliant intuition in 1940s to plant some international varieties in Bulgaria. And if Bulgaria today is so well known all over the world, it's also because of them. It's just because of them, because they start everything. And what is important to say that those big brands, the noble families company, they still work today to ensure the high quality of Bulgari in the world. So us small producers like us can really benefit from this popularity that,
Maybe if they don't take up all the market share. I guess my question really is Sassicaia, is it? People know what Sassicaia is. So
yes, because it's the first wine that Robert Parker rated like with 100 points.
But are they doing a good job of promoting Bulgheri or are they doing a good job of promoting Sassicaia so that it makes it, you are kind of starting from a point of, yeah, we're made in the same region as Sassicaia and no one knows about the region because the wine is on its own reputation. And the other thing about those wines is that I haven't had a lot of them. They're too expensive for me, but they could be from anywhere, really. I haven't had Sassicaia, but I've had Ornellaia before. Ornellaia could be from California. It could be from a lot of different places. Truly an international wine. It trades on its name, not on Bulgheri. So I just wonder if it makes it harder for you or whether it's easier for you to go into a sales situation and say, okay, we are not known as Bulgheri, but we are from the same place as Sassicaia.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier.
Okay.
So we don't have the same economic power of them, of course, you cannot even compete. But they have been tracing like really a good path for us to be able to get ourselves known in the world. Just when we go to Vinitaly, to Provine, and be part of the consortium Bulgheri of this prestigious consortium is a big benefit for us. Yes.
Yeah.
And also people may think it's not like that, but the consortium is very united. So there is a lot of collaboration and respect between the producers. So we just benefit from those big brands. What is beautiful about the consortium, I want to say, because we are two women, that there are many women at the presidency and also in the members of the consortium. And many women are working in the vineyard. So in Bulgaria, there is this great feminine energy, positive energy that, really embrace the entire terroirs. That's things that I wanted to say about the consortium of Bolgheri.
That's hugely important, especially in Italy, where still there is not the presence like there is in France of women winemakers, of women wine owners. We see a lot of that in France. Spain and Portugal and Italy are definitely a little bit behind in that. And it has to do with the culture, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. But I think in Bolgheri, we are open. It's great.
That's a great thing to point out. It's fantastic. I love hearing that because I think that it's a really important thing. It's not to say that men are not also important. I always point that out.
No,
I love
of course
men.
not. Of course not.
But it's important to have both opinions because women drink a lot of wine also.
Of course.
Men making all of the decisions is not healthy for anybody. So I think that's fantastic.
Also, what's important to say that it's true what you say. Maybe a lot of people come to Bolgheri because of the big brand to visit the big wineries. But it's also true that there are many, many people that are curious like you to know also the small producers. So it's good to know both of them because we do wine also because they started before us. So,
Yes, and they helped with infrastructure. It is true. The reason I ask is that from an international perspective,
of course,
I would have zero idea that you existed because when I think of Bolgheri, I just think of those names. And I just want other people to know that there's this whole growth of people that are here. And especially as I'm going to make my plea here, which is two things. If you're listening to this and you happen to be a wine journalist, please cover people like Vigne di Silvia. Stefania and Silvia are amazing. You can contact me if you're a journalist and I will give you their contact information or just go on their website. The second thing I want to say is that if you are a distributor in the US and you are looking for some really interesting wines, and especially as we mentioned, people are looking for things like Vermentino and Cabernet Franc. Here it is. It's right here, and you couldn't ask for a better family to work with. So I just want to put that out there. The website is lavinia.desilvia.com, right?
Exactly.
Pretty easy to find. They've got to contact us. You can get in touch with her very easily. They also do accept visitors. So please, if you're going to Bolgheri, and you should go there, the seaside is there also. It's amazing. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
And with that, this has been another episode of Wine for Normal People. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.